Genesis.
Hey, what's up? It's Genesis, and I wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. In this video, I'm going to show you 3 different ways to sound design. And before we begin, a quick disclaimer. If you're new to sound design and want some help to get you started, then this video is great for you. But if you're looking for a tutorial on how to make a specific sound, then unfortunately, this video is not for you. There's plenty of good videos out there, or if you want to, you can look around my channel for some inspiration. Without further ado, let's begin. One of the most common ways to approach sound design is with an objective. This is where you set a goal before you start your sound design session. For example, you want to get a bass growl, or you want to get some glitch fills. And from this way, you start with a sound source, like a synthesizer or a sample and such. And from scratch, you do a lot of trial and error and or troubleshooting to get the sound palette that you want. However, because of this, I don't really recommend this way to beginner sound designers, mainly because it gets a lot easier to do it this way once you have a basis of knowledge of sound design, such as what frequency modulation is and how to use it, how different filters work, how flanges and phases work, different types of distortions, and so on and so forth. And once you know how these work, and once you're familiar with different patterns of chains of effects and why they work, then it makes it a lot easier to get closer to the sound that you want. But if you don't really know what you're doing, it can be quite rage-inducing because of all that trial and error and troubleshooting, and especially if you're going after a pinpoint goal. As a quick example for this method, I'm going to set my objective to making some heavy yaoi basses. So I'm going to start with Operator, since that is my most favorite built-in synth in Ableton. In order to make a yaoi bass, we need to have a fundamental understanding of how vowels and formants are made, which requires knowledge of suitable wave shapes, suitable filters, and other effects. So for a suitable wave shape, we need something with a lot of overtones. So like a saw or a square. Most typically, saws are used because it has all of the overtones that you'll need. The next thing that we'll need is a filter to accentuate some overtones that will then get shaped by some sort of bit crusher like redux or erosion. I like to use erosion because it's a lot cleaner for me and it has a lot more control compared to redux. So once I get a resonance that I like, I put it through an erosion or redux. I'll show you both. Let's change the filter to a bandpass. There we go, and compare it with a redux. So that's how to make a basic yaoi bass, but of course I wanted to have something a bit more unique and a bit more punchy, a bit more heavy than this. And to get to that goal, I need to have more understanding of what makes a sound heavy, what makes a sound big and aggressive, without it being too muddy or too messy. So let's say some sort of distortion, like roar, and then maybe good old OTT because everyone uses it. And I don't blame them because it does get a nice shape. But let's just say we're going to use just some basic distortion like this. Let's make some more. There we go. Something like that. A bit more OTT. Try erosion, or redux rather. This changes to low pass. Yeah, this is all cleaner for me, the erosion. and then using an envelope to give it that shape. If I didn't have any of these fundamentals, I would probably be at this for a lot longer to just get a nice yoy like this. That was the objective route. The next route, which I feel like is a lot easier, is the explorative route. For this method, instead of already going for a specific sound or specific goal in mind, this time you're going to restrict yourself to only using a specific synth, or a specific sound source, or a single or groups of effects, or maybe even just one single parameter. And with this way, you're exploring more capabilities and finding new techniques with your target parameter. And I do this a lot with my production challenges like operator only or serum 2 only, etc., which you can see in my channel, link in the description below. But as that states, I'm using one specific synth as a way to explore for sound design. This is a lot easier because you give yourself more freedom to explore around that target parameter rather than just trying to carve a path from the get-go, and you're therefore focusing more on the journey than the destination, which in this case can get really fun. As an example of this method, I'm going to show you one really simple but fun way to get really heavy bass sounds, and it requires two main effects, and it is a resonator and a distortion. I don't really mean these kinds of resonators that make stuff like this. For example, I'll put a kick drum here. I don't mean this kind of resonator. It still can be cool, but the resonator that I'm talking about are the other effects that can resonate, such as phasers, flangers, and filters. They can all resonate if you put the resonance or feedback quite high and give it an exciting impulse. So I'll show you that right now. Again, going back to operator, back at the basses, and I'm going to put a distortion at the end, another roar, because why not? I'm going to start with a filter because that's usually the simplest but the most fun. Let's put the distortion up, and let's introduce some harmonics here. I'll just create a random bass. Something like this. So here's a simple distorted bass. But once you put a filter through it, you get this. And then we can experiment with whatever is going on in this block here of a filter or some sort of other resonating effect and a distortion. Let's try using a notch and low pass. Oh yeah, that's got some potential there. Maybe try the phaser, flanger kind of thing. And this is still a mono, so might as well put something that makes it not mono. Shout out my boy Imperium for this house rack. Put it before distortion. And for good measure, get an OTT. Or if you add another phaser flanger, because why not? But this time make it a phaser because the first one's a flanger. That squeal is crazy. That's sick. What if we change the distortion stuff this time? That is crazy. Oh my days. You know, I'll stop there. I'm already having too much fun. I'm like passing time here way too fast. Right, so as you probably saw, this can get really fun. Because it's very interactive, very hands-on, and that extra freedom can allow you to find even more things to look onto later. Like, I'm really intrigued with that phaser with an LFO after a filter and all of that going through distortion. I feel like resampling that and then chopping up all those parts where it starts to get like a howling resonance can get really cool. So there's that. And on to the third and final method of sound design. It is generative. And don't worry, this has nothing to do with AI. AI sucks. But this is more so about you setting constants, ranges, and chances of randomness within your, what I call a patch, especially if you're into modular synthesis, or like rather within your signal flow. And then after that, you start resampling and then letting your little sound design organism generate new sounds after every impulse or every pass. Even though this method is more like a dice roll, you can approach this in two different ways: luck versus creativity. Luck as in you're letting that patch do its thing and then you're waiting for the right sound to be generated, which you can then chop up and save for later. Or creativity as in being able to use any sound it spits out as a new starting point for another sound. If you're familiar with Mr. Bill, then you might already know the term mud pie that he coined, which is pretty much like a long resampling of a sound design session. Starting off by recording immediately before you make any sound allows you to capture every single possible sound that you've made, and that way you don't miss any happy accidents that might happen. Shout out Bob Ross. But with the whole generative method, there's a lot of cleanup at the end, because then you have to chop up resamples of the sounds that you like to keep. And depending on how long you do your sessions for, this has a possibility of making up a very long sound recording file that you then have to chop up and spend even longer deciding which ones to keep, which ones to dispose of, and how to organize your entire session. Although this is a very complex method, it brings out a lot more results. And for this example, I am going to again start with operator. This time I'm going to set a few constants. First of all, the operator stays there. Let's see what's next. Why not a reverb stays there? We'll put the dry wet about here, and that will stay the same. We'll put the decay relatively short. This will not stay the same because I'm going to plan ahead real quick. These will all be off. That will be constant. This will be off. That'll be constant. These will be down there as constants. Next, I will have this going through some sort of phaser or flanger. The dry wet will be constant, it'll be down there, but everything else might change. A filter as well, why not? Let's lean into that crazy bass sound design again. So let's get a filter. Where's it? Also filter. The dry wet will be always on, that will be constant. Everything else will be different. To top it all off, I will use a squash. You can get this for free on my Discord. Link will be in the description below. And let's also have a distortion. Let's use roar again. And just to be completely safe, a limiter so my ears, or our ears rather, don't die. Now for the chances of randomness and ranges, I will be using expression control as my dice roller. And I will set all of these sources to be random. So each time a MIDI note is triggered, it will create a random value. And I'll just start putting some modulation on some random stuff. So I'll map the first one to the chorus here, second one here, third one here. Alright, and then to set this up, I will set a MIDI clip in place. And I'll make this, let's say an E. Let's have the MIDI note that long. And then this much silence. You can already hear it getting crazy. I'll then set a loop point here. Now I'll also have a audio track already set to resampling. But if you don't know how to do that, make sure you have these guys visible. Then click on the drop down menu. And instead of external in or whatever else you have it as, set it to resampling. And then you're good to go. And then 3, 2, 1. Just let this run now. Oh! And as messy as this is, we're just going to have to let it run. Oof! And as it's running, I can also mess around with a few things whilst doing that. Oh my days! Oof! I'll start adding a few things to make it a little cleaner. Like something like this. And maybe, just in case. Go to 160 and then I'll shorten this MIDI clip up. Let's put the reverb after everything. Whoa. Whoa. Right, I'm gonna stop there. But as you can see from this file name here, I've made 274 samples from that one session, which is pretty insane. However, I'm not gonna save any of this because I've already made a massive sample pack using this method right here for my Patreon members. You're gonna get, I think, 500 of those. And speaking of Patreon members, thank you to all my free Patreon members for showing your support. Much love to my tier 1 patrons on the screen right now for supporting the channel directly. And I'd also like to give a big ups to, and I'm sincerely sorry if I butcher your name, LifeX Earth, Simarqua, Any10, Flavian V, and Bruno Cher for being my highest tier patrons. The absolute legends. And that's going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video around. All my links are in the description below. This includes my Discord, Patreon, merch, and more. Once again, thanks a lot for watching, and stay creative. See you in a bit. Boosh!